Hello, a good day to you. Thanks for having a watch. I'm reading today the first chapter from my book, Willowmere Pond. It's available on Amazon, and if you can see on the cover, there's a raccoon and a woodchuck and a squirrel having tea time on a houseboat, which might cue you in that it's a children's story. But I prefer to think of it as a story for childlike hearts. A story for those who haven't lost their sense of wonder. It's a story about friendship, discovery, adventure, the enchantment of nature, and especially about the more wonderful things. So, pull up a chair, and especially some younger ones who might enjoy it. Get yourself a nice cup of tea, Mom and Dad, and listen to Willowmere Pond, Chapter 1. The first chapter is titled A Scrambling Squirrel. At Willowmere Pond lived two mallards, Bartholomew and Morse by name. They were bachelor drakes and lifelong friends who'd known each other since duckling days. Every morning they paddled about among the reeds and cattails and discussed the local happenings and the news from afar yonder, from over the fence and beyond the old barns, and from such distant places as Quail Meadows and exotic Fox Manor. "The goose family's eggs have hatched," Morse said one fine May morning as the mallards nosed around in the lily pads. "You don't say," Bartholomew said. "7, weren't they?" "8," Morse replied, with all the matter-of-fact pride of a duck possessed of superior information. "8, and all waddling and honking about as healthy as hares." "Indeed." Bartholomew had brought up a minnow, and he smacked it in his bill with noisy relish. 8? Why, good gander Gregory must be just plump with pride." "He is?" "And the goosewife, Cecily?" "She is." "Bless my bill, that is good to hear. Good, good, good. What's this, then? There goes that fellow, what's his name? It's on the very tip of my tail." "Trafalgar," Morse said, then raising his voice, he quacked out, "Trafalgar Squirrel, where are you bustling off to so briskly this morning?" Trafalgar Squirrel, who was midway up an elm trunk, darted out along a branch that hung above the pond. "Hullo," he said. "We say," Bartholomew said, his bill half submerged in the muck, "what's all your rush and hubbub?" "Take it from us, lad," Morse put in, "it's no good zipping about through life like a hummingbird. Well, unless you are a hummingbird, I suppose." At that the mallard became lost in deep thought. But Bartholomew kept his presence of mind. "Where are you off to?" "I don't know," the squirrel said. "I'm looking for something." "Is that so? What are you looking for?" Bartholomew asked. "I don't know," the squirrel said again. "You don't know?" "How?" Morse said, for the curious conversation had drawn him back. "Can you look, you know not where, for you know not what?" "And so forth and what not," Bartholomew added. Trafalgar wistfully twisted his tail and looked this way and that. "Oh, I do not know. I've been feeling this way for a while, and at last it's become more than I can bear. I awoke this morning before the sun in the most dreadful tizzy." "You don't say," Bartholomew said sympathetically, though a darting minnow had divided his attention. "I felt strange and restless. My ears tingled and my nose twitched, and I knew deep down in my heart of hearts that something was missing. So I got up and started to look for it, and I've been looking from then until now. But I haven't found it, and I still don't know where it is, or where it might be, and I'm afraid I am becoming quite flustered about the whole thing." "You see that is no good at all," Bartholomew said. "Now, here is a saying I had from my father, and he from his father, and he from his. So the antiquity of this proverb is no less venerable than my great-grandsire. When you feel—" But at that moment the minnow he'd been eyeing came into range, and he dove for it and came up in flapping, splashing triumph. His bill full, he murmured something apologetic, and nodded to Morse. "As our dear Bartholomew was saying," Morse said, puffing out his chest authoritatively, "that is no good at all. A search for who knows what, who knows where, will only end who knows how and who knows when, if it ends at all. It is simply no way to go about, even for a squirrel." "But what shall I do?" Trafalgar said. "I'm all topsy-turvy. I'm sure whatever it is I'm looking for, that I must find it." "Yet you cannot find it without knowing where to look or what to look for," Morse mused. "Indeed," Bartholomew said, having finished with his minnow, "you can't expect to know you have found it if you do find it, and if you don't find it, you can't know that you haven't found it. Isn't that so?" "I don't know," said the squirrel. "Is it?" "As coldly certain as the ice in winter's white heart." "Do you know, good Bartholomew," said Morse, "that I'm not sure it is so very certain." "What's that?" "Well, if he does find it, he might realize then that he's found what he was looking for." "Ah," Bartholomew said, "but might he not mistake what he finds for what he sought? Now, suppose, for instance, that what he longed for in his little squirrel heart was, say, a minnow. But why should he want a minnow?" By this time, the two mallards had quite forgotten Trafalgar Squirrel was even there, and swam out into the pond carrying on their discussion. Trafalgar shook his tail and dashed on in search of he knew not what. He scurried on along the bank, weaving up the well-tended grass of the lawn and down into the thick weeds and rocks of the water's edge. Sweet scent of lilacs wafted on the air, mingling with the mossy freshness of Willowmere. But nowhere could Trafalgar smell or see or otherwise sense what he sought. A rippling in the water caught his attention, little waves bending as they rapped the reeds, ever so softly lapping the rocky shore. Trafalgar turned his gaze out upon the water, and saw the source of the movement, an old houseboat gliding across the pond. The ship came slow but steady, like a great turtle, with its peeling red paint and a lustreless gleam on the rails, where gold leaf had long ago flaked away. Faded black letters on the rim, so dull the squirrel could barely read them, spelled out the boat's name, Belladonna. On the deck, sprawled across a pile of colorful, overstuffed cushions, reclined a sturdy raccoon. Trafalgar marveled when he saw him, and thought his red silk vest and blue jacket looked smart indeed. The raccoon lay on his back, with his eyes closed and his snout raised, an open book cradled across his chest under one arm. But he wasn't sleeping, for his other paw held a feather quill, and tapped it now and again upon his nose. The houseboat has approached quite close to the shore, when the raccoon abruptly opened his eyes, and saw the squirrel gazing at him. "Hmm," the raccoon said in what sounded a satisfied tone. "Young squirrel, your being here is very fortunate indeed. Serendipitous, providential." Then he twirled the quill, and leaned forward towards Trafalgar with great earnestness. Tell me, what rhymes with blossoming? Trafalgar was unprepared for the question. He scratched his chin rapidly as his mind hurried to and fro. Possuming? The raccoon considered the suggestion deeply. With one paw he lifted the book from his chest and held it up, murmuring. A breeze snatched his words and brought them to Trafalgar. In spring sparrows wing, and we wait the blossoming. The bumblebees bumble, and possums are possuming. But after a few minutes, the raccoon shook his head and closed the book. We are not all made to be poets, dear squirrel, he said consolingly. Yes, well, Trafalgar shifted nervously. I say, have you seen anything? Anything interesting, I mean. The sort of thing someone might be looking for? My dear squirrel, the raccoon said, leaning back and drawing a deep breath of fresh spring air. The things I have seen. Oh, yes. I have seen dandelion seeds dancing on the wind like fairies. I have seen geese fly south for conquest in their militant formations, honking the war cries of winter's advance, and the swallows churning north in glee at spring's ever-surprising victory. I have seen the great silver catfish in all his monstrous might surfacing on a moonlit night, though he was too strong for my net, too cunning for my lure, and too swift for my harpoon. His eyes gleamed as he spoke. I have seen winters white with snow, the whole world serene as an ivory statue. I have seen a rainstorm with lightning like bursting suns, and thunder that shook the very depths of the mole mines, and winds that stripped the fronds of the elder willow bare in their fury. And I have seen the double rainbow that followed among the parting clouds, reflected double again in the waters of this wondrous pond, when all the earth lay silent in gratitude and awe. I have seen the blooming of the autumn crocus, and harvested its bitter-sweet saffron with trembling paws. I have seen the sun rise amber over the tree-tops and rejoice all things in the welcome of day. I have seen the sun set across the world's end vastness, purpling the twilight clouds, and have sat in reverie amid the settling darkness. I have seen the fox-lord on the prowl, a swiftness of stalking copper, burnished with crafty cunning and uncanny grace. I have seen the robins hatch, cracking through their turquoise eggs and coming forth beak first into the light. I have watched the wonder fill their infant eyes, and the hunger thrill them, set them chirping for life, life, life. Oh, such things I have seen. Trafalgar stood struck silent by this, and for long minutes could not recall his own question. But it came back to him, and he tried again. That is very wonderful, but what I meant was, have you seen anything missing? Missing? Anything that looks like it might be missing by someone. Missing by whom? Trafalgar swallowed. Me. The raccoon rose slowly and looked across the water at him, brows furrowed. My dear squirrel, he said, I think you had better come aboard and tell me all about it. Going back to the wheel, he guided the houseboat in so that it hugged the shore. Then, with an effort, He heaved into the water a huge rusty anchor, which hit the pond with a terrific splash and set the whole boat rocking. He shifted out a wooden gangway and motioned for the squirrel to hop aboard. Trafalgar felt rather excited at the idea, but a little frightened. He'd never been on a boat before, let alone a rickety old houseboat. He put one paw on the gangway, but sensed the rocking of the boat and drew back. "Is it quite safe?" he asked. The raccoon laughed, a deep, natural belly laugh. "Safe? My dear squirrel, the Belladonna is the sturdiest ship this side of the Mississippi." "And are we very far from the Mississippi?" the squirrel asked dubiously. 50 miles as the crow flies. Now come aboard." Hesitantly, one step at a time, Trafalgar crossed the gangway and padded onto the deck. The boards creaked a little beneath his tread, but seemed sound enough. The raccoon gave a little bow. "Welcome aboard the Belladonna, my dear Mr. Trafalgar. Trafalgar Squirrel." "Trafalgar. A very great pleasure, I'm sure," said the raccoon. "And my name is Ambrose. Ah, it must be coming on time for luncheon." He pulled from his vest a pocket watch on a gold chain. When he opened it, Trafalgar was surprised to see that instead of numbers to mark the time, it simply had one hand that went around the face to mark meals. Breakfast, morning tea, elevensies, luncheon, afternoon tea, dinner, supper, and midnight snack were all labeled as little diamonds on the face. The watch hand had, indeed, crossed onto the luncheon diamond. "Oh," said Trafalgar politely. "Well, I don't mean to intrude. Perhaps I shall go and return after you've had your lunch." "No, no, I won't hear of it. You must stay and lunch with me. Sit yourself down on a cushion, just there. Right. Make yourself at ease. I'll only be a moment." Ambrose opened the door to the cabin and marched down into the belly of the boat. It was only a moment before he returned, carrying a tall stack of trays and plates and baskets and boxes. He placed the trays on the deck between them, and stocked them with plates and forks and knives and spoons, and fried fish and chips, and pickles and olives and sliced pears, and thick wedges cut from a wheel of pungent yellow cheese, and tall glasses of lemonade. "I hope, Trafalgar Squirrel, you have a hearty appetite," he said. Then, taking a whiff of his cheese wedge, he sat back and sighed. "Ah! Genuine Arkansas Longhorn Colby, the finest cheese known to raccoon kind." They ate, and Trafalgar felt a little calmer with a full stomach. The gentle bobbing of the boat, which had worried him at first, began to feel soothing, like Mother Earth's heartbeat. Warm sunshine bathed them, and only the cool tartness of the lemonade kept him from drifting off to sleep. He realized this, and it brought a question to his mind. "Ambrose," he said, "I thought raccoons were, how do you say it, nocturnal, that you sleep during the day and move about and do things at night." "Customarily that is true," the raccoon said, "but not for me. I have what my friend Professor Percival calls an inverted circadian rhythm, which, apparently, means that I sleep at night like you, and labor during the day when reasonable folk are abed. So then, I take it you are new to the neighborhood of Willowmere, Trafalgar?" Ambrose asked. "Yes, I've only been in the area a few days." "I see," Ambrose nodded. "And do you have family in the area?" "No," Trafalgar said. "I don't think I have any family at all." "Very sorry to hear that. Well, I hope you will accept me as, at the very least, a friend. But you say you are missing something?" Trafalgar told Ambrose about his sense of something missing, though he didn't know what, and how his search to find it had thus far turned up nothing. He told also about what the drakes said, that even if he found it, he might not know that he had, or if he didn't find it but found something else, he might think that he found it. He told also that this had his mind in a muddle, and his heart in a tussle, and his stomach in knots just thinking about it all. The raccoon listened with eyes closed and steepled fingers, every once in a while giving voice to a meditative growl, At the end of the squirrel's story, Ambrose remained still and quiet, until Trafalgar thought perhaps he'd fallen asleep. But the raccoon opened his eyes at last and spoke decisively. Yours is no small problem, my dear Trafalgar. But I think, if it were me, I shouldn't worry about thinking I'd found it when I hadn't. If it is so strange and deep a longing, I suspect other things will fail to fulfill it. In any case, all that you can do is search. Now, here is what I suggest. Stay a while with me. The belladonna drifts on the will of the Willowmere, and over the course of days we shall see all about the pond and its surrounds. Perhaps we shall come upon what you are looking for. In any case, the boating life is a balm to many a malady. You mean, Trafalgar said, that you want me to stay? As my guest, Ambrose said with a generous nod. There's a spare cabin below, and I shall be quite glad for some company. Thank you, the squirrel said. Thank you very much. Ambrose pulled up anchor, and the boat slowly ambled across the pond. He and Trafalgar talked a while more about this and that, until Ambrose really did fall asleep. Trafalgar was very comfortable, but far too excited to nod off. He sat and felt the sway of the boat, and listened to the rustling wind in the new leaves, and watched the dragonflies hover and zip in pursuit of mosquitoes. After some while, Ambrose stirred and sneezed, and looked at his pocket watch. My goodness, it's quite time for afternoon tea, he said. He got up and began to gather the plates and things. Trafalgar offered to help, but Ambrose declared he wouldn't hear of it. The raccoon bustled all the lunch things below deck and returned shortly after with new armloads of dishes and food. Cheese curds and salty crackers and sardines, biscuits with strawberry jam, muskmelon, meat pie, all sorts of finger sandwiches, chocolate chip cookies, and of course a steaming hot pot of tea. The mingled smells came to Trafalgar's nostrils, strange but delicious. Yet he noticed that Ambrose set out 3 plates and 3 cups and saucers. Is there someone else aboard? He asked. No one but you and I, Ambrose answered absently as he poured the tea. A good strong brew, young Trafalgar. Ulster Red, an old favorite. I import it specially. Cream? Oh, no thank you, but good lad, take it straight and strong. Sugar? No, that's quite... But before Trafalgar could get out the question of the 3 cups, a bird swooped down and plopped into the vacant spot. Perfectly punctual as always, Reverend, Ambrose said, not even looking up from the tea. Well, that was Chapter 1 of Willowmere Pond. And as I said, it's available on Amazon if you like the story and you want to follow and discover the rest. Thanks for joining me. I hope that you have a wonderful day.